Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the next interesting stories. And if you have any feelings about the story, leave your opinion in the comment section. We look forward to hearing from you. Now, let's listen to this dramatic and touching story. What if the people who raised you turned their backs on you, only to beg for forgiveness when you became a $100 million success? My name is Sophia Bennett, and at 26, the one destined to fulfill my parents' dreams of stability and prestige. My father, a respected accountant, and my mother, a school principal, had drilled into me the importance of a secure career. Get a degree, land a corporate job, and climb the ladder, they'd say at every family dinner. So I did. I graduated with honors in business administration from Ohio State University and landed a job as a junior analyst at a prestigious financial firm in Chicago, Sterling and Company. At first, I thrived. The long hours, the pressure, the endless spreadsheets, it all felt like a badge of honor. I was making my parents proud, sending them photos of my sleek office and modest but tidy apartment. But deep down, something gnawed at me. The corporate world was a soul-sucking machine. I spent my days crunching numbers for clients I'd never meet, under a boss who cared more about optics than innovation. My creativity, my passion for problem-solving, was stifled. I dreamed of building something of my own, something that could change lives. But every time I mentioned the idea to my parents, they shut me down. Don't throw away a good thing, Sophia, my dad warned. Startups are a gamble. You'll end up broke. The breaking point came after a particularly grueling quarter at Sterling and Company. I'd been working 80-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and adrenaline, when my boss called me into his office. Sophia, you're not cutting it, he said, his tone cold. You're distracted. Step up or you're out. Distracted? I was exhausted. That night, staring at my reflection in my apartment's bathroom mirror, I made a decision. I couldn't do this anymore. I wanted to build something meaningful, even if it meant risking everything. The next morning, I walked into Sterling and Company, handed in my resignation, and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had an idea, a startup called Grow Easy, an app that would connect small farmers with local buyers, cutting out exploitative middlemen. It was a dream I'd sketched out in a notebook during late nights, and now I was ready to make it real. But my parents didn't see it that way. When I called to tell them I'd quit, the line went silent. Then came the explosion. You quit? My mother shouted, her voice trembling with disbelief. After everything we sacrificed for you to have that job? You're throwing your life away. My father chimed in, his tone icy. If you think you can just walk away from a stable career for some pipe dream, don't expect us to support you. You're on your own. Sophia. I tried to explain, Grow Easy could help farmers, it could be big, but they wouldn't listen. Don't come crawling back when you fail, my dad said before hanging up. Later that week, my older brother, Ethan, called. Mom and Dad are done with you, he said, his voice laced with pity. They're telling everyone you've lost your mind. I'd stay away if I were you. Their words cut deep. My parents had always been my rock, their approval my compass. Now, they disowned me, erasing me from their narrative as if I were a stranger. I felt the sting of rejection at every family gathering I was no longer invited to, Thanksgiving, Christmas, even my cousin's wedding. Ethan sent me a photo of the family at the wedding, smiling without me, captioned, "Wish you'd made better choices." I deleted it, but the hurt lingered. I moved into a tiny studio apartment, my savings dwindling as I poured everything into Grow Easy. I worked alone, coding the app on a second-hand laptop, reaching out to farmers at local markets, and pitching to anyone who'd listen. It was grueling, and doubt crept in. What if my parents were right? What if I failed? But I couldn't give up. Late at night, As I debugged code under the dim glow of a desk lamp, I thought of the farmers I'd met, people like Mr. Dawson, who'd been cheated out of fair prices for years. Grow Easy was for them, not for my parents' approval. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd been quietly building something far bigger than they could imagine. My startup wasn't just a dream. It was a ticking time bomb of potential. And I was determined to prove them wrong. The months after my parents disowned me were a blur of sleepless nights and relentless determination. I'd moved into a cramped studio apartment in Chicago's outskirts, the kind with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was all I could afford after quitting Sterling and Company. My savings were depleting fast. Every dollar went into Grow Easy, my startup app designed to connect small farmers directly with local buyers. I believed in the idea with every fiber of my being, but the isolation was crushing. My parents' rejection echoed in my mind, their words, "You're on your own," a constant reminder of the stakes. I hadn't spoken to them in months, and my brother, Ethan, only reached out to relay their disapproval. "They're embarrassed," he'd say. "You're the family disappointment now." But I wasn't alone in my vision. During those early days, I'd started visiting farmers markets, talking to growers about their struggles. I met people like Maria Lopez, a third-generation farmer whose family was barely scraping by because middlemen took 40% of their profits. "If I could sell directly to buyers, I'd save my farm," she told me, her eyes tired but hopeful. That conversation lit a fire in me. Grow Easy wasn't just a business. It was a lifeline for people like Maria. I worked around the clock, teaching myself advanced coding to build the app, designing a user-friendly interface, and cold emailing potential investors. Most ignored me, but I kept pushing, fueled by the belief that I could make a difference. What my parents didn't know, what I kept hidden from everyone, was that I'd been laying the groundwork for something massive. While they thought I was floundering, I was building a network. I'd connected with a small but passionate group of farmers who agreed to beta test Grow Easy, giving me feedback that sharpened the app's features. I also reached out to local grocery chains, pitching the idea of sourcing directly from farmers through the app. Most said no, but one, a regional chain called Freshfields, saw potential. Their CEO, Rachel Nguyen, met me at a coffee shop, her skepticism melting as I demoed the app on my beat-up laptop. "This could disrupt the supply chain," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Let's start small, 50 farmers, a pilot program. If it works, we'll scale." It was a lifeline, but I kept it secret, even from my closest friends. I didn't want to jinx it, and I certainly didn't want my parents to know, not yet. While I worked on the pilot, I also entered Grow Easy into a national startup competition, TechVision Innovate, with a $500,000 grand prize. I spent weeks perfecting my pitch, recording a demo video in my tiny apartment with a borrowed camera. I didn't tell anyone, not even Maria, who'd become a friend and early supporter. The competition was a long shot, thousands of entries, some from tech giants, but I poured my heart into it. If I won, it would be the validation I needed to take Grow Easy to the next level. If I lost, I'd still have the Freshfields pilot, a quiet win I was building in the shadows. Meanwhile, my parents' silence grew louder. Ethan sent me a message one day. "Mom and Dad are hosting a big family reunion next month. They said you're not welcome unless you get your life together. Just thought you should know." I stared at the text, my chest tightening. They'd written me off completely, assuming I was a failure. I didn't respond, but their rejection fueled my resolve. I worked harder, skipping meals to save money, sleeping on a futon to afford server costs for the app. I was broke, but I wasn't broken. Grow Easy was gaining traction. 50 farmers signed up for the pilot, and Freshfields reported a 20% increase in sales within the first month. Rachel called me late one night, her voice buzzing with excitement. Sophia, this is working. We're ready to scale 500 farmers by next quarter. I hung up, tears streaming down my face. This was my secret weapon and it was starting to pay off. Then an email arrived that changed everything. I'd made it to the final round of TechVision Innovate, one of 10 startups competing for the grand prize. The finals were in San Francisco, a week after my parents' reunion. I booked a cheap flight, my heart pounding with possibility. I didn't tell my family, I didn't need their approval anymore. But I knew that if I won, the world would know my name, and my parents' narrative of failure would shatter. As I boarded the plane, my laptop bag heavy with dreams, I whispered to myself, this is just the beginning. The TechVision Innovate Finals in San Francisco were a whirlwind of nerves and adrenaline. I stood backstage at the Moscone Center, clutching my laptop, my palms sweaty as I watched the other finalists present their startups. There were polished teams from Silicon Valley, with slick pitches and flashy tech, AI drones, blockchain platforms, VR fitness apps. And then there was me, Sophia Bennett, the small-town girl with a dream to help farmers, armed with nothing but Grow Easy and a story. My app wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and I'd poured my soul into it. As my name was called, I took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. The audience was a sea of investors, tech journalists, and industry leaders. Their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. I opened my presentation with Maria Lopez's story, showing a photo of her farm and explaining how middlemen had nearly destroyed her livelihood. Grow Easy connects farmers like Maria directly to buyers, cutting out the middlemen and increasing profits by up to 40%, I said, my voice steady. I demoed the app live, showing real-time data from the Fresh Fields pilot, 500 farmers now on board, $2 million in sales, and a 30% growth rate in just 3 months. The audience leaned forward, scribbling notes. When I finished, the applause was thunderous, and the judges' questions were sharp but encouraging. I left the stage feeling a flicker of hope, but the winner wouldn't be announced until the gala that evening. Back in Ohio, my parents' family reunion was in full swing. I'd seen Ethan's Instagram stories, laughing cousins, a backyard barbecue, my mom's famous apple pie on the table. I wasn't there, of course. They'd made it clear I wasn't welcome, their rejection a constant ache in my chest. But as I sat in my hotel room, refreshing the TechVision website, a notification popped up. Winner announced. My heart stopped. I clicked, and there it was. Grow Easy had won the $500,000 grand prize. The article headline read, Small-town startup disrupts agriculture, wins TechVision Innovate. I screamed, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a win, it was validation. A roaring declaration that I'd been right to follow my dream. The news spread fast. Tech blogs picked up the story, and by the next morning, my inbox was flooded with investor offers. One stood out. A venture capital firm, Greenway Ventures, wanted to invest $10 million to scale Grow Easy nationally. I met with their team in San Francisco, and within a week, we'd signed the deal. Grow Easy was now valued at $100 million, a number that made my head spin. I'd gone from a disowned daughter scraping by in a tiny apartment to a tech founder with a 9-figure valuation, all in less than a year. But the real moment I'd been waiting for was yet to come. I flew back to Ohio, the TechVision trophy in my bag, and drove to my parents' house unannounced. The reunion was over, but the family was still gathered. My parents, Ethan, aunts, uncles, cousins, all in the living room watching TV. I walked in, the room falling silent as they turned to stare. My mom's eyes widened, my dad's jaw tightened. Sophia, my mom said, her voice a mix of shock and uncertainty. I set my laptop on the coffee table, opened it, and pulled up the TechVision article, the Greenwave investment announcement, and GrowEasy's valuation report. I wanted you to see this, I said, my voice calm but firm. My startup, GrowEasy, just hit $100 million. I won a national competition, and I'm helping thousands of farmers. You disowned me for quitting, but I built this without you. The room erupted in gasps. Ethan's mouth fell open, my cousins whispered frantically, and my parents' faces turned pale. $100 million? My dad stammered, his voice barely a whisper. That's impossible. My mom's hands trembled as she scrolled through the articles, tears welling in her eyes. Sophia, we didn't know, she said, her voice breaking. I met her gaze, unflinching. You didn't want to know. You wrote me off, told everyone I was a failure. But I didn't need your approval. I needed to believe in myself. The silence that followed was deafening, their guilt palpable. I turned to leave, but not before adding, I'll be in touch. Maybe now you'll see me for who I am. The confrontation at my parents' house marked a turning point, not just for my relationship with them, but for my entire life. Walking out of that living room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For so long, I'd carried the burden of their disapproval, their rejection a constant ache in my heart. But now, with GrowEasy valued at $100 million and my name plastered across tech headlines, I'd proven them wrong in the most undeniable way. The victory wasn't just financial, it was personal. I'd reclaimed my worth, and no one could take that away. In the weeks that followed, GrowEasy exploded. The $10 million investment from Greenwave Ventures allowed us to scale rapidly. We expanded to 5,000 farmers across the Midwest, partnered with major grocery chains, and even caught the attention of national policymakers. I hired a team, coders, marketers, agricultural experts, all of whom shared my vision of empowering small farmers. Maria Lopez, the farmer who'd inspired me, became our ambassador, her story featured in a viral ad campaign that brought in thousands of new users. GrowEasy wasn't just an app anymore, it was a movement. And I was at the helm. My parents, meanwhile, were forced to face the reality of their mistake. After I left their house, they called repeatedly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies. Sophia, we're so proud of you, my mom said in one, her voice trembling. We were wrong. Please come home. My dad, ever the stoic, sent a text. I misjudged you. I'd like to make things right. At first, I ignored them. The hurt ran deep, and I wasn't ready to forgive. But over time I softened. They were my family after all, and while their rejection had scarred me, I didn't want to carry that bitterness forever. I agreed to meet them for dinner, setting clear boundaries. I'm not the same Sophia you disowned, I told them. If you want me in your life, you'll respect my choices. They nodded, tears in their eyes, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse. Ethan, my brother, was a different story. He'd been complicit in my parents' narrative, relaying their harsh words and distancing himself when I needed support. But after GrowEasy's success, he showed up at my new office in downtown Chicago. A sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a team buzzing with energy. Sophia, I owe you an apology, he said, his voice shaky. I should have stood up for you. I was wrong. I studied him for a moment, then nodded. I forgive you, I said. But I don't need your validation anymore. He smiled, a mix of relief and awe, and asked for a tour of the office. As I showed him around, I realized how far I'd come, from a disowned daughter to a CEO with a mission. The media frenzy continued. I was invited to speak at tech conferences. My story of grit and triumph resonating with aspiring entrepreneurs. Forbes featured me in their 30 Under 30 list, calling Grow Easy a beacon of innovation in agriculture. I used my platform to advocate for small farmers, lobbying for policies that supported sustainable farming. Grow Easy's valuation soared to $150 million by the end of the year. And I reinvested profits into community programs, scholarships for rural kids, grants for struggling farmers. Maria Lopez's farm thrived, her family now debt-free, and she sent me a handwritten letter. "You saved us, Sophia. Thank you." My parents started bragging about me to anyone who'd listen, a stark contrast to their earlier shame. At a family gathering I finally attended, they pulled me aside. "We're so sorry," my mom said, her eyes glistening. "We should have believed in you." My dad handed me a photo from my college graduation, one they'd kept on their mantle. "You've always been our pride," he said. I hugged them, the wounds healing slowly but surely. I didn't need their approval anymore, but having their love back felt like a bonus. As I stood on my office balcony one evening, watching the Chicago skyline glitter, I thought about the journey. Quitting Sterling and Company had been the hardest decision of my life, but it led me here to a $150 million empire, a family reconciled, and a purpose bigger than myself. My parents' rejection had nearly broken me, but it also forged me. I'd turned their doubt into my triumph, and now the world knew my name. Grow Easy wasn't just a startup. It was my legacy, a testament to what happens when you bet on yourself. Thank you for following this story. If you like emotional and dramatic stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to read more interesting stories.